So at the onset, I'd really like to thank AIOS, Dr. Partha Vishwas, and Dr. Himanshu Mehta for letting me talk on the topic today. It's a very wonderful topic. It's all about how the cataract has gone off well. A cataract is never just a cataract, and I have learned that over a period of time. We do get unique surprises, which we'd never expect, and a couple of them that I'll be speaking on is related to glaucoma. So, let me do this. Okay. So this is a regular cataract that I did not expect any complications happening. It went off pretty uneventful, and everything is going on fine. And probably it was just a little harder cataract, so it took a little while to get the cataract out. But everything was fine. IOL was put in properly, and the next day I see is, of course, there are defaults, but there was some amount of hyphema. So hyphema generally occurs one day after the cataract surgery. However, it may take 2 to 14 days also for it to come up. It is characterized as red blood cells in the anterior chamber, and occasionally the patient may present with just blood staining on the iris. So it's very, very important to check that if the patient has any kind of blood in the anterior chamber. Now, why does it occur? There are early and late onset hyphemas. Early onset could be because probably there was some bleeding from the ciliary body, or cut end of the Schlemm's canal, or from iris or iris root, or from the corneoscleral wound. So wounds which are located more posteriorly tend to bleed more. If there was some iris neovascularization which was not seen, post late onset post cataract surgical hyphema could also be because of neovascular vessels that form in the inner aspect of the cataract incision site. So they are very friable and they'll end up bleeding, or maybe because the PCOL haptics, which are eroding the ciliary sulcus, or ACOL haptic that was there, which may have caused bleeding by chafing the iris surface. And rubeosis or iris neovascularization can also be a source of late post-op hyphema. So, how does a patient present with? They might say that there is some visible blood in front of the eye. There's photophobia, pain, blurry, cloudy, or blocked vision, or blood might not be visible if the hyphema is very small. Why does this need attention? Why hyphema can dissolve or resolve on its own, but there are times when it needs special attention because they can cause raised IOPs, peripheral anterior synechiae, posterior synechiae, corneal blood staining. Sometimes, if there are huge spikes because of hyphema, then it can even lead to optic nerve atrophy or ghost cell glaucoma. So hyphema has its gradings, whereby microhyphema or circulating red blood cells can only be seen on slit lamp examination, and they have a very good prognosis. About 90% get better very soon. And then there are grades that go from 1 to 4, which is less than 33% to 33 to 50%, more than 50%, or it's called the 100% or the 8 ball figure hyphema. And according to its gradations, it has its prognosis. So, what are the factors that decide the prognosis? It's very important to recognize that prognosis of visual recovery is related to these following factors, and they include the amount of associated damage to the other ocular structure, whether there is any secondary hemorrhage that's happening, or whether there are complications of glaucoma, blood staining, or optic atrophy. So how do we treat such patients? Obviously, eye drops to reduce, steroids that will reduce or limit inflammation, or and dilating drops that will help with pain, patching over the affected eye, bed rest, limited eye movement. That is very important. Head is elevated of at least 40 to 45 degrees while sleeping. We have to keep checking the eye pressures, and if it's high, use beta blockers or anti-agonists. Pain control for all patients with hypopema should not include aspirin containing products or NSAIDs, as that can increase the risk for further bleeding and stop any anticoagulants. So this was another case, which was a 61-year-old woman suffering from. So she came with history of recurrent blurred vision, floaters, redness, elevated IOP, and pain in the right eye. She was operated elsewhere with a scleral fixed IOL, and could not understand why that redness and pain kept happening. So on gonioscopy, we saw massive pigmentation, which was detected in the anterior chamber angle of the right eye, along with anterior adhesion of the iris and angle closure in the superior temporal quadrant and inferior nasal quadrant. The other eye, the chamber was pretty normal. Okay, a UBM was done where high echoes were detected in the sulcus at 5 and 10 and 11-degree position, indicating that the iris root was pushed forward by malpositioned intraocular lens haptic. And so this is basically a UGH, which is uveitis glaucoma hyphema syndrome, or Ellington's syndrome. Many publications have been made for the UGH syndrome, and it does say that it is extremely important to diagnose this, because misdiagnosis of a UGH syndrome can cause excess testing and may eventually lead to loss of vision. So it's very important to pick up these, even if the patient is complaining of mild pain or little blurring. It's very important to check the patient if they are having a UGH syndrome. And it has also been published that these UGH syndromes can be mainly because of a malposition or a subluxation of the lens. So, what is the treatment of such? Shaffing of the posterior iris by IOL haptic almost confirms the diagnosis of UGH syndrome, although it will still be necessary to exclude delayed endophthalmitis. IOL explantation and anterior vitrectomy combined with intraocular injection of antibiotic was performed in the eye, and after 1 month follow-up, the patient's vision was better and the pressure came under control. So, what is the synopsis of this? That UGH has been reported in patients with ACIOLs, and mechanical irritation caused by malposition of the IOL is the underlying mechanism. Eyes with UGH syndrome can be managed with topical IOP lowering steroids um, or other anti-inflammatory drugs. However, the symptoms might not be completely resolved if the mechanical stimulation still persists, and hence surgical intervention may be necessary. And my third and final case is about a malignant glaucoma. Okay, this is coined by von Graffe in 1869 to describe the aggressive form of post-op glaucoma that was resistant to treatment and resulted in blindness. So we all know that it is also called as ciliary block glaucoma, aqueous misdirection, or direct lens block glaucoma. The normal direction of aqueous flow is from the ciliary body, from the posterior to the anterior chamber and through the Schrems canal. But in case of ciliary block glaucoma, there is an aqueous misdirection into the vitreous that is causing increased posterior segment pressure, causing anterior movement of the lens iris diaphragm, hence shallowing the anterior chamber and causing iridocorneal contact with the cornea. So the AC is extremely shallow, and the shallowing of the central, it's very important to diagnose this and differentiate it from the pupillary block. So shallowing of the central anterior chambers associated with increased intraocular pressure and normal posterior segment anatomy. Absence of pupillary block needs to be confirmed by the presence of a patent iridectomy and posterior segment pathology. So we need to figure out if there is any suprachoroidal hemorrhage that is happening posteriorly. So if I see a patient who has a shallow anterior chamber, and if the pressures are high, it could be, if we need to figure out if there is a PI that was already done, it's patent or not, or there's no PI. If there's no PI, then it could be a pupillary block, but in case of a peripheral iridectomy, there's a high chance of it being malignant glaucoma. And now UBM always confirms this where there is the anterior rotation of ciliary process, which presses against the lens equator uh, and prevents the flow of the aqueous. And hence it is known as a ciliary block glaucoma. So how do we treat this? Diagnosis, we have to first of all diagnose that this is malignant glaucoma. And if so, we use cycloplegia, aqueous suppressants, osmotic agents, steroids. If it's a pseudophakic or an aphakic eye, Nd:YAG laser capsulotomy and disruption of the anterior hyaloid face, laser therapy could be used, or eventually a surgical vitrectomy is mandatory. So, what is a take home message? There is always a possibility of post op surprises even after uneventful surgery. do a thorough pre-op evaluation to look for any signs that may tell us for an impending storm. It's very important to ask the history of the patient and ask if the other eye, if it is operated, was it uneventful, and a lot of it can be known from what has happened in the other eye as well. And in case of complications, keep calm and try and give the best treatment to your patient. Thank you so much.